Hey everyone, I wanted to take a look today at a couple of the DeckLink cards that are available. Now, these are two models that I've never actually owned before and wanted to add to my arsenal. Before I install those, I wanted to actually take them out of the box and give you a brief little tour, and then I'll get them installed, and then I'll show you around some of the software and what you can do with them a little bit. So I'm going to talk about the DeckLink 8K Pro and the DeckLink Mini Monitor. So these kind of at opposite end of the spectrum. This is a high-rank card, and this is their entry-level DeckLink card. That's available as part of that lineup. Alright, so let's first take a look at the DeckLink 8K Pro. Now, this was a product that I actually kind of ignored for a long time. Like, 8K, who's actually shooting 8K? I certainly don't produce an 8K. It doesn't really make much difference to me. But then I researched a little bit more, and there's a lot more going on here than just a card that's capable of capturing or playing back 8K video. The way that Blackmagic handles 8K is what they use for 12 gig SDI connections on their cards in order to do that. And one of the interesting things that they've done here is they've actually made this card capable of capturing or playing back up to 4 video sources at one time. So that's what essentially means is that this card you can actually capture from 4 different cameras at one time, or play back 4 different video sources at a time, or any combination thereof. Each one of the 4 connections, in fact, let's go ahead and open this and I'll talk as I go. But so yeah, each one of those 4 connections can either be an input or an output, and you're able to sort of mix and match in any way that you actually want to. So I ground myself very briefly here. So I'll pull this card out of here. So these 4 SDI connections that are here can either be an input or an output. You get to decide. You get to, in addition, you can actually gang them together in order to produce 8K. That's really where the 8K part of the name came from. So you can use, if you wanted to do 8K, 4 12 gig SDI connections up to this card, and then you're able to capture 8K, or you can use the 4 as an output, and output one 4K stream, or again, use each one as an input or an output. So you could have this first one be an input, and the next one above it be an output, input, output, however you want. So in that way, you're able to either output one 8K, or 4 4K, or 4 HD, 4 standard definition. The choice is yours, or mix and match. One way that this would be very useful would be to output 2 different video sources with key and fill. So you have your fill, and then your key for video source 1, and then fill and key for a second video source. So it's actually kind of unique. And I thought for a long time that Blackmagic actually didn't have a card quite like that in their lineup. Because you look at at least for 4K, so you look at their lineup, they have the Quad and Quad 2, which can capture 4 sources, but only in high definition. Those cards don't do 4K at all. So I thought that I was out of luck if I wanted to have a single card that would actually be able to handle 4 4K sources at one time. But anyway, nevertheless, here it is, the DeckLink 8K Pro. So yeah, interesting card. So these 4 SDI, this bottom one is actually a reference or a genlock, if you want to use it that way. But it's a way to make sure that the outputs on the card are in sync with other video sources and or your video switcher that you happen to be using. So yeah, they got the 4 connections for video, reference source. There is a power connection on the back. This card requires a little bit more power than can typically be given by a PCI Express slot. So you use a 6-pin PCI Express power connection like you would with a graphics card. And then there's an expansion slot on here, and we don't really know what that's for. They don't have any products that currently use that. So it may be possible that the card has more capabilities than can be exposed by these connections that are here. One thing that's interesting about this is that it does have 4 completely independent capture and 4 output circuits on it. And so there's a possibility, this is pure speculation though, that with an add-on card you'd be able to do 4 input and 4 output both simultaneously. So again, that's just pure speculation on my part. I don't have any information that says that is definitively the case. So anyway, so that is the 8K Pro. The other one I want to take a look at is the DeckLink Mini Monitor, and this is the opposite end of the spectrum. This is their entry level. This one I have not even removed from the package just yet, so we'll go ahead and do a quick unboxing of that. So yeah, so this is very useful if you want to be able to play back video from a computer, or the way I actually use these most is a way of monitoring on a dedicated video monitor what you're doing in a video editor, so Premiere, Resolve, After Effects, Final Cut, whatever. So any of those, you pop one of these cards into your computer, and then as you're editing, you can output that video directly to a monitor, and be sure that you're getting the exact signal that you want to get. So I did a video a while ago here on my channel about the Ultra Studio Monitor 3G, and so this is basically the same thing in a PCI Express card instead of being a Thunderbolt device. So you pop this into one of your PCI Express slots. It's an X1 connector on there, and then that gives you an SDI and an HDMI output on your computer. Again, very useful for video editing, video editors, and so forth. So anyway, so just very briefly, what am I doing with these? Well, a number of things. First of all, in this trailer, I have a computer, I call it my server, that I use for doing some video playback and some video capture and some video editing. And the card that I have in there is the DeckLink SDI 4K. It only has one input, one output. And that's been a little bit limiting at times. There's been times that I want to be able to capture, maybe, say, 2 cameras at once, or a program and a camera or whatever, or want to be able to use multiple applications at the same time. So I maybe want to do live streaming with OBS, and then also be capturing in Zoom or whatever as well at the same time. And the way these applications work, you're only able to have one application talking to your card at a time. So rather than putting a whole bunch of different DeckLink cards in there, I decided to just get one that allows me to have up to 4 inputs. That way I'd be able to use up to 4 applications at a time, or I'd be able to do capture on 2 and then fill and key playback on another 2 outputs. Another possibility would be for me to actually use this for instant replay. So I have 4 cameras coming in, and then have the DeckLink mini monitor as an output for that same instant replay application. That way, do instant replay for 4 cameras relatively affordably. So that's kind of the thinking behind it. So just wanted to have the flexibility of having multiple inputs on a computer, and the computer I'm going to be putting this into only had one X4, well, it's actually X16 slot available. So I couldn't do 2 of these. I had to do this and then use an X1 slot with a mini monitor. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from on this. But I thought it'd be kind of nice to put a video together showing what these cards are and showing the software interface and a couple applications actually using them. So with that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and pause this video. I'll be back momentarily after I install these in the computer and let you guys see what that looks like. Alright, so this is the computer that those cards are going to be going into. This is my server for the trailer here. I've talked about this many times, but I've never actually shown it on camera before. Just a very, very brief tour. So this is obviously a machine I built myself. It has an AMD Ryzen 5 3600 processor, 64 gig of RAM, and 4 sticks there. There are 12 terabytes worth of hard drives, 3 4 terabyte drives. Those are in a RAID 0 stripe for both performance and for capacity. There are a couple SSDs over here. So Samsung, I believe this is an 870 Evo, 1 terabyte I believe, and there's a less expensive one there. There are 2 SSDs on the motherboard itself, an NVMe, 1 terabyte and a 2 terabyte. Over here we have 3 removable bays where I can basically insert and remove media drives, archive drives. So every time I work on a project, I'll insert a hard drive into the front, archive the footage onto that drive, and then I can remove it. So that's always a nice option to have. And then come over here into the expansion slots. I have the RTX 2060, which I had to modify in order to get it to fit in the case. The upward-facing power connector wouldn't have worked in here because the top of this card is quite literally flush with the top of the case, and there was absolutely no room for an upward-facing connector there. But anyway, so that's an RTX 2060, and then a couple other random cards. But we get to the card I'm going to be replacing, which is a DeckLink SDI 4K, and that has worked absolutely great for me. But I need more input and output, so I'm going to be replacing that, and then I'm going to be replacing. This is a USB expansion slot or card that's over here on the end. I'm going to be putting the DeckLink mini monitor in its place. I'll be able to get a lot more use out of that. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and take care of this. So this computer actually is plugged into the wall, but the master power switch is turned off. That way I can be sure that anytime I touch the case that I'm going to be grounded and avoid any potential shocks that might be going on there. So with that, we'll go ahead and remove the original DeckLink SDI 4K. Should just pop right out of there. So yeah, so that's the card that I'm going to be replacing. I will be repurposing this elsewhere. In its place is where we're going to be inserting the DeckLink 8K Pro card. So, alright, so I've got the 8K Pro card in, and now I can remove the USB adapter and put my DeckLink mini monitor in. Alright, so the cards are in. I'm going to button this thing back up, and we'll start with the software. Okay, so cards are in, drivers are installed. I updated the desktop video software, and let me show you actually how to do that, because that seems to be one of those questions that comes up from time to time. So if we go to Blackmagic website, you go under Support, go over to Capture and Playback and click on that. And as of the time I'm recording this, desktop video 12.1 is the latest version. So in this case, you select Windows, and then fill out your details, or you can just click on Download Only here to download the software. The software install does take a couple of minutes, so don't do this in a hurry. And then you may have to upgrade the software, the firmware on the cards as well, which I did, so that will take a few minutes as well. So both my cards needed a firmware update. So total time after I finished installing the cards until the system was actually ready to use was about a half hour. So give yourself a little bit of time in order to complete those steps. Okay, with that said, actually show you guys how all of this is configured. So I'm going to close out of here, and then I'm going to launch the desktop video setup application. That's where we configure our cards. And you'll see in here that it has detected my DeckLink mini monitor. Let's blow this up a little bit. But it's also detected, it looks like 4 separate DeckLink 8K Pro cards. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's all the same card, but the way these cards work is they essentially pretend to be 4 separate cards. That way you can reconfigure them any way you want. So if you have one capturing at 1080, you can have another one capturing at 4K, you can have another one capturing at standard definition, all at the same time, and you can have those going into different applications. You can also do the reverse and do playback for multiple different applications and different resolutions and frame rates all at the same time. They really do act like they're 4 completely independent cards, even though it really only is one. Now in terms of configuring this, so it's a one card that has 4 capture, 4 playback, but only 4 connectors to share between them. We need to go into the configuration. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and configure DeckLink 8K Pro number 1. I'll click on the little button here. I've got it set into default to 1080p 2997, which is the format that we use most often with our clients. But where things get interesting though is over here on this connectors tab. And so here's how you specify how those SDI connectors on the back actually work. And I've already pre-configured mine, so I've got 2 of them acting as inputs and 2 of them acting as outputs. So 8K Pro number 1 I've got acting as an input, and it's basically saying that's going to be on SDI input number 1, which is the one on the bottom. So I click on that, and it automatically detects if there's a signal present, or based on which software you have installing and whether you're in capture or playback mode, it switches the purpose of that output. So you don't have to go into this desktop video software in order to reconfigure that. You just basically determine that by the software that's actually being run and whether the software is using it in capture or playback mode, and then the card automatically switches based on that. So let's say I've got connector for number 1 set to be either input or output, and I actually did the same thing on my other. So if I take a look here in number 2, that's SDI 3. It's a little strange how they numbered those, but SDI 3 in or out for number 2, and then number 3, that's going to be SDI number 2 in or out, and then the last one, number 4, is going to show up as connector number 4. Again, SDI 4 in or out. Now, with that actually installed and running, let me launch the Media Express, Blackmagic Media Express, and this is an easy way to determine whether you're actually getting signals into your card or not. So I'm going to go over here, click on Log and Capture, and bingo, it's showing me my program output. Now what I've got that, if you go up to the device menu here and click on that, you can see that my devices are all showing up. So the 4 desktop capture cards inside of my 8K Pro are all showing individually, and then it's also showing the DeckLink mini monitor in there as well. So I can choose between them. Say for example, 8K Pro number 2, I actually have my multi-viewer from my switcher going in there, and so you can see that that input is now bringing in the video from my switcher. And those are 2 different formats. So I'm shooting this video in 4K at 29.97 frames per second. The multi-view is coming in at 1080i, 29.97 frames per second. So I'm able to take advantage of both of those, send those videos to 2 different locations with two different sources in 2 different formats without any problem. Now, because the 4 capture devices on that card act like individual capture devices, you can actually use those in any application that you want. So here I've actually got OBS capturing off of one of the inputs, but it's very easy for me to change that to another. So I'll double click on the device there, and then for the under device I will choose 8K Pro 2, and now it's capturing my multi-view coming out of my switcher. So I can have 4 different applications that are using that all at the same time. Very nifty. Similarly, I can actually have all those going into the same software as well. So here in OBS, I'm going to add another Blackmagic device, and then I'm going to choose DeckLink 8K Pro 2. And now I have both of my video sources coming in to OBS at the same time. So if I want to do picture-in-picture, or however I wanted to do that, I can certainly do that very easily. So this would be a great way to get video into software switcher like vMix or whatever. So get a card like this, run 4 cameras into that, and then be able to switch your video sources all in vMix with a single capture card. Very, very cool. Now, at the same time I'm doing all of that, I can actually use one of those 4 modules as an output. So if I come into Adobe Premiere Pro, and I've got a timeline from an event that I shot here a few days ago, if I go up into Preferences, and then Playback, I know it's going to be hard to see, I apologize for that, but choose Blackmagic Playback, and I click on Setup from in there, and from there I can actually choose one of those 4 devices, or in this case I could also choose the DeckLink mini monitor as an output there as well. So in this case I've got DeckLink 8K Pro number 3 being used as the output for Premiere, and then if we take a look at, so now I have OBS capturing from 2 of the inputs up here, but I've also got Premiere outputting at the same time. So as I start playback here, you'll see in the lower left-hand corner of your window, your screen there, the output of Premiere that's totally separate from the video that's being captured inside of OBS. So a lot of flexibility there, a lot of very cool things that you can do. Speaking of vMix, I'll actually show you how you add those individual sources in vMix as well. So if we come down here into the lower left corner of the screen and click on Add Input, and then I'm going to choose Camera as the source, and then from my drop down, that's where I can actually select one of those video sources. So here I'm going to select 8K Pro number 1, which is, if we remember right, is my program feed coming out of my Blackmagic 8M switcher. So I'll go ahead and click on that, and that should be coming up. Or I should say, it would be coming up if the version of vMix that I had actually supported 4K video. In this case, it doesn't. So it would be working if it did, if I had actually the 4K capable version. So in this case, I'm going to select 8K Pro number 2, input default, and this one is 1080i, so that one should come up. So there we go. So there is the second input on my card coming into vMix, and so from there, cut to that and switching entirely within software using a DeckLink capture card. Now, very similarly, you could actually have those 4 inputs go into the instant replay feature inside of vMix and be able to do instant replay for 4 cameras. And then in my case, I'll be able to use the DeckLink mini monitor as the output for those. So I could actually do a very capable, very cool instant replay system using just those 2 cards, and a reasonably powerful but very achievable PC. So this computer is really not anything special, but it would be perfectly capable of doing 1080 at up to 60 frames per second capture of 4 different cameras and doing instant replay for all of those. So there it is. So those are the DeckLink 8K Pro and the DeckLink Mini Monitor. So those are great cards if you need to be able to get video in and out of a computer that has PCI Express slots. Those cards are supported in Windows, Mac OS, and in Linux as well. So if you're running one of those operating systems and you have a computer that has PCI Express, be able to pop those in there and give yourself the opportunity to capture and or playback video quite easily on SDI and or in some cases HDMI outputs. So very cool products, and as I've done the video here, you'll see links. You'll have seen links that pop up to let you know where you can get more information on those or to purchase those as well. So use those links. It's a very easy way to get to manufacturer information or to find a place to purchase. So anyway, if you have questions about this, you can leave those in the comment section down below, or even better, join us over on my Discord server at djp.li/discord, and you can answer questions there, and the community will weigh in and answer those as best we possibly can. There are several hundred people in there that are actively contributing to the conversation, so if I'm not available, other people can chime in and help answer questions there as well. So anyway, that's going to do it. So thanks everyone for watching, and have a fantastic day.